We are still in 2 Kings this morning, and chapter 2, believe it or not, we've been stuck in chapter 2 for a bit. Chances are pretty good we're going to be stuck in chapter 2 for a bit longer. But that's good because I need to be short, sweet today anyway. You will remember that we have followed Elijah and Elisha as Elijah's been called away by the Lord and has been one of the very few that has not tasted death. He started up here somewhere, the town that's not there, or it's not on the map it is, but in Gilgal, and went to Bethel, and then down to Jericho, and across the river, and somewhere, we don't know how far from there, where he was taken with the fiery chariot, I guess, in a whirlwind or a storm, however you want to translate the Hebrew there, that in some kind of a very outstanding event separated Elijah and Elisha as they're walking along, and has taken Elijah and removed him from the earth. And Elisha now is coming back, as we saw him last time, he'd come back, followed their path back, and was at the river, crossing the river again. You'll remember the significant crossing the first time was with his cloak, his mantle, that of the prophet, as he struck the water, and in doing so, the Lord stops the water, and he crosses on dry ground with Elisha. And now he's coming back, and we saw him kind of following suit as they come back across that river. And it's kind of our introduction to Elisha's ministry, if you will, on his own. He's been the man in training for a long, long time. And the question probably is hanging in his mind a little bit. His request of his teacher Elijah was to get that inheritance, if you will, of the firstborn son. Remember, he asked for a double blessing of the spirit that Elijah had, the double portion rather. And the double portion, a lot of translators still say, oh, he's going to get twice as much, and that wasn't the question at all. You remember, he was asking for the right of the firstborn son. And the firstborn son got the double portion of the estate of his father by being his first in line to inherit behind his father. And in that culture and in that tradition, the firstborn, doesn't matter how smart you were, how brilliant you were able to conduct business or anything else, the fact that you were the eldest was the way that the estate, the majority of the father's estate, was passed on from family to family to family, and that was just the way it worked. So what Elisha asked for from him was the right of the firstborn to have, if you will, his estate. And his estate being, he owned nothing physical on this earth. What he's asking for is the right to carry on the mission of Elijah. And of course Elijah tells him, that's a tough question. And the reason is, it's not his to give. He doesn't own it. It was granted to him by God. And he's the best that he can tell him. He says, if you are present and if you see me go and God takes me, that will be the sign that God has intended for you to have that place. And of course we know that's exactly what happened. So Elisha has now received this confirmation. And as he's coming back to the river, one of the things you kind of got to put in your mind in this whole picture to get into his footsteps a little bit is you've had the instance way back when Elijah first selected him by tossing the mantle on his shoulders, indicating he was to be called as his helper and man in training. We've followed him now, and he's seen his master taken in this great whirlwind of fire. And as all the dust cleared, if you will, and the scene cleared, and the whatever rushing sound that may have accompanied it went away, he stands there and the mantle's on the ground in front of him. And he gets over his mourning the loss of his dearly beloved friend and teacher and almost a father to him, I'm sure. And now he picks up the mantle which we talked about last time was no small thing. Because that mantle and picking that up and requesting, first of all, that ministry, and then reaching down and picking up that mantle means he takes on all the good stuff that Elijah got to enjoy in his life, right? Everybody was so fond of him. I mean, he just had people falling at his feet everywhere he turned, right? Now, he got to look forward to a life of being hated, of making everybody angry. We will find out, and very soon, that he will become the target of those who are the followers of Baal and Ashtaroth. Because it's interesting, if you go through and follow through the prophets, these very towns that we just came through, this town of Gilgal right up about here, Bethel, Jericho, all of those become, and probably at this stage already are, the beginnings of centers of worship of the pagan gods. And they are all condemned for their being a center of that worship. So even as the schools of the prophets that we saw are located there, the opposition is located there as well. So when he picks that up, he knows that. He knows by picking that up, he is stepping into a tough go.
Where are you in the Bible?
I'm totally lost. No, I am too. I am in 2 Kings chapter 2.
Oh, second.
Believe it or not. I know it sounds like we are in 2 Kings 2, and we're nearing the end of the verse 13. He picks up the mantle that we're talking about, and he heads back to the Jordan River, and he's going to cross right near Jericho, somewhere right in here, probably right under the word there, give or take. So he's coming back, and there's this interesting little passage that says that he came back. He says, verse 14 there, he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him and struck the waters and said, this is an interesting question for a guy like Elisha to ask, isn't it? Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah? I mean, he's followed him for all these years. He's seen the miracles. He's just been across the river. Why would he ask that question? And is it really a question? Or is it his faith thing? I mean, if he doesn't, imagine this. Remember, there's a whole bunch of the prophets, the school of prophets, there's at least 50 of them, maybe more, sitting over on the other bank somewhere, watching this, because they followed to see what would happen to Elijah. They're all wondering what's going to happen, and probably it happened too far away for them to see. But here comes Elisha back all by himself. Now, you're going to be really embarrassed if you take this cloak and go whap on the water, and now you're standing there with a soggy cloak. This is going to be really embarrassing. So the fact that he goes up there and even considers doing the same act that he saw Elijah do means that he's already determined something in his mind, hasn't he? Does he know where the God is?
It's almost as if even all that time that he'd been involved with Elijah and the Lord, he thought, maybe all this time I've been riding on Elijah's coattails, and that when Elijah left, God left. And this was just to say, is he still here?
Is he here? Did I get that? Did I understand the message right? I saw Elijah leave. Is the Spirit here? Is God really giving me that assignment?
He's asking, is God with me or is he not?
That's the question, and it's half a question. I don't think it shows a lack of his faith, because he takes that thing and it's like, here it is in his mind when he swings that thing. But it's almost a declaration along with a question. It's really kind of a strange deal, and it's frustrating that I'd like my Hebrew scholars to explain the grammar and everything, to say, yeah, this is a question, no, this is a statement, and I didn't find that. But it's almost a combination of the two as he comes up and strikes that, and the waters part, and the answer is there. So the next question then that comes to my mind, I don't know remember these are the 5-year-old wise or whatever it is. Why is the sky blue? Well, the why that hit me is, okay, the water parts, and the question is it just for Elisha that the water parts? Well, this is the start of his ministry, isn't it? This is really the beginning of what God's going to be doing pretty much through him as his number one guy. And there's a bunch of guys lined up on the bank over there. And it's the school of the prophets. The other ones that Elijah, that maybe Elisha's even been involved in training. And they're all standing there watching. When they see that water part, what happens?
They freak out.
They freak out. They know. Oh boy. Do you think they know? Let's look. Verse 15. Now when the sons of the prophets who were at Jericho opposite him saw him, they said, holy smokes. Oh, that's not it. No. The spirit of Elijah rests on Elisha. I mean, they saw that. They said, there it is. And they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. No doubt about it. When they saw that, they saw Elijah going across. They see Elisha coming back. And they say, that's it. That's it, boy. God is there. This is the guy we're to follow. I think Elisha needed that because, in other words, you got a division of the house, don't you? Well, is he in or is he not? How do you know? Who's the right guy? What is it that, how do you tell? Who is the guy that God has his hand on and says, he's the one? And God made it really clear for them. And they're going to need it because the pressure is going to be on all of them in the very near future, if it isn't already. So they come and they bow to the ground before them. And then there's this verse 16, and boy, I'll tell you, commentators, it's like saying boo in a herd of chickens. They go everywhere on this verse. They said to him, behold now, there are with your servants 50 strong men. Please let them go and search for your master. 16. Yeah. Why did I miss one? Yeah, we bowed to the ground at 15. So 16, here we are. There's 50 strong men. Oh boy, tough guys. Please let them go and search for your master. You go, huh? Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him on some mountain or into some valley. And he said, no, don't do that. Now, you gotta scratch your head a little bit here. We know as they're coming through, every time he came to one of the schools in one of these towns, what did all these guys come around and tell Elisha? Remember, it was, leaving. Did you know? We got this prophecy. We got, God has told us Elijah's leaving. God's taking him away. Did you know that? And he's going, yeah, I know that. So now he comes back, and they watched him go watch the water part. Elisha comes back all by himself, and the water parts, and they go, whoa, the Spirit's on him. And the very next thing they're saying is, yeah, can we go look? Maybe God just picked him up and dropped him out there somewhere. If he's alive, maybe he's still alive out there somewhere, or maybe he's dead and we need to recover his body and give it a proper burial, or we got to go find him. And you got to wonder. So what were they thinking when God said he's going to take him?
Who was it? There was only one other person that said was taken alive up to heaven. That was Enoch.
Yeah.
And they might remember that, but it was just kind of.
It's like there's got to be a body somewhere.
Yeah.
Got to be a body somewhere. And yeah.
Were those 50, I can't remember, were those 50 people that were following them, were they part of the group that came out as they went through these towns and said that the name?
Yeah, I think they were the curious ones who were going, did you know? And so they kind of gathered this crowd of onlookers of the prophets. They're fellow believers, if you will, but they're just trying to, what's happening here to us?
Look how many times God had to prove to those that are coming out of Egypt, and they were constantly questioning things. He'd show them miracle after miracle after miracle, and they still had to be proven to them.
We walked through the middle of this with water, how many feet high on both sides, got to the other side and said, man, what are we going to eat? You go, excuse me?
Sounds like the apostles.
Yeah. We just walked through the ocean and you're worried about whether he's gonna give you something for dinner that night. I mean, holy smokes.
Then he drops the birds and then they go, well, who's gonna cook it?
Yeah. Just never happy, are we? So a little bit of this is probably, you go a little bit of unbelief, disbelief, perhaps misunderstanding of what they had. And another part of it, I think, is for the benefit of the hearers of the story. Because it would be easy to say, well, yeah. I mean, he could have gone out there and keeled over under a sagebrush somewhere. And Elisha comes back. Gee whiz, I don't know. Maybe Elisha took him out there and he was jealous of his master and he took him out. Left him, started this rumor, and maybe he's killed him out there and he's laying under a bush somewhere. Well, now we know there's 50 really tough guys, and they went out there. These are young, tough guys that can hike. They better, because that's rough country out there. I forgot to get some pictures of it, but you know, it's not rolling Yakima Valley hills. It's straight up, straight down, desert, barren, rugged country they're talking about. And they're going to spend 3 days just going, 50 guys going separate ways, and they're going to cover all the major highways and byways and gullies, and they're hollering, you know. They're doing a search party. And they're really insistent. You want to see how insistent they are is because he said, no, you don't go, because he knows what's happened, right? And you'll see a little bit of the character of Elisha here. But when they urged him until, it says, he was ashamed, finally said, go. And people argue a little about the ashamed. What's it mean? He was embarrassed. What was it? And it's almost like, the sense I get is from the guys that I trust the most, is that they just wore him down to where he finally just said, okay, go. That he was, in a sense, gracious enough. You know, Elijah would have turned around probably in his easygoing personality and gone, are you kidding me? God said he's gone, he's gone. You know, Elijah was this fiery, in-your-face kind of guy. Elisha's really different personality. Now, he can be, and he will learn to be, a little more ferocious relatively soon. But at this point, with these guys, he said, you know, it's like he's explained it, said, no, you understood, God took him, he's gone. And they go, no, we want to make sure, we need to, you know, what if? And he finally says, all right, go ahead and go. Go look, give it a shot. So,
Elisha was not only gracious, but God was gracious too.
God was really gracious to let them go and check it out.
You know, Elisha was the only witness to this, right? To Elijah. So we're basically, the Bible is counting that his word is the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, no one else saw this except Elisha himself. So, yeah, then these guys are, actually what these guys are going to do is they're going to back up a portion of that because they're not going to find the body. They're going to go look, and we'll see that they searched 3 days and they did not find him. And verse 18 says, and they returned to him while he was staying at Jericho, and he said, didn't I tell you? So like that, did I not say to you, do not go? I told you, you're wasting your time. But now they know. They got 50 guys that can say, yep, we looked, he's gone. God took it. So it's been nailed down, confirmed for us that he is gone. It's a big deal, right? Isn't that exciting? He's gone. And now we know it. What does this do for us?
I want to be beamed up easy like that.
That's what we want. Bring on the chariot, Lord. Take me home.
I want to go.
Well, what do we know about how God works and how he selects his people for his assignments from this? How does he pick them out? Does he go out and look, have talent contests?
So I'm kind of wondering about this prophet school. Did he pick all those guys? Or is it something that's passed on from family to family?
Yeah, how do you have a prophet school?
I've always wondered
especially in an age when the society is crumbling and it's coming down around your ears and people are walking away from. In fact, maybe this would be a really good time for us to kind of step back just a little bit while you're wondering about what's the purpose of this passage being in here for us today. Now, the hard part about this part of the Bible, and I'm going to make it maybe. The hard part about this is it's not this didactic, line on line, precept on precept, just teaching you principle stuff. It's history and stories, but it's not thorough history. It's not, every major event. In fact, you can go through the other things we know about history and go, how could the writers leave out these major, significant world events that were happening at these times and focus in on something like this that seems somewhat insignificant in comparison to other stuff that's going on. And then suddenly we'll zero in on a king over here that you go, man, he didn't reign very long at all, but they really focused on that. And this one over here got kind of hardly any mention at all, and he was a king for a long time. And so you kind of got to wrestle with, okay, what is it that the writer's trying to convey? And there's kind of a chart I ran across that has 4 columns in it. On this column over on one side, you've got all the kings of Israel, the northern kingdom, and it follows them down through. And then you've got a kings of Judah, and follows that line down on through. And you can see as you go through the book of Kings that it will hit most of these as you go along and tell you something about everybody. Sometimes it's not very much. And then you'll remember we talked about the line that God tends to be following is the line of the prophets over here on the other side. And he lines up either the prophets like Elijah and Elisha that were physically present and are mentioned in the text, or the next line over connected are the prophets that we find in the minor prophets in our Old Testament. And this is where it gets really gnarly going through this thing, is because these guys, we're coming up real close. The prophet Joel is going to be the first one that comes along here in just a few years. And he's going to slide into the picture, and you will never see him mentioned in Kings. And yet he's writing about the events that are taking place in Kings. So the real focus of the writer is more through the line of what the prophets are doing, what the prophets are saying, and what's happening to the nation. And there's some key things that you will see that happen to the nation, and the one of them is kind of picked out by Solomon, which is interesting because Solomon was the guy, if anybody is responsible for first kind of shifting the focus of the nation, it's King Solomon. And in one of his Proverbs in chapter 29, it says, without vision, the people perish. And that proverb has been taken and spread all over the place. And everybody said, oh man, if you're a business, if you're a nation, like, you've got to have vision for the future. If you don't have vision for the future, you'll just go. But what he's talking about, and when you read the context of that proverb, what he's talking about is those who see God. Those who have a vision for God and what He's calling us to do, what His Word says. If you don't have that focus, they perish. And what you have through the Kings is an illustration of how that works. And you'll see that Solomon had his vision on the Lord and what he wanted when he started his ministry, and by the time he got to the end, where was he focused? It was, these wives are saying, this is a good idea. And you read the book of Ecclesiastes where he tried all these things. His vision was wandering off over here. And we'll see every time that their vision gets moved off of a focus on what God said in His Word and what He demanded of them, they immediately went to what? The golden calf worship. It was the worship of Baal, the worship of Ashtoreth, the latest, greatest new idea, whatever it is that the world's doing. Let's do alliances with these nations. God said, I want you to be my people that are my example, that have my word, that bring my truth to the nations. And they went out and said, I bet we could cut a deal with Assyria. We could get a really good deal if we go out and cut a deal with Assyria. That would give us some security. And God said, I think I told you that, what was it? Solomon wrote about security. No. We're supposed to keep our eyes on God, and if we don't, then He's supposed to bring us insecurity to focus us back there. And so they're always, and you see this whole, through this whole thing, we see this strange shifting of people as they take their eyes off of God and move here and there. And it's just a gradual decline as you go along, with a few little bright spots here and there. Very few of the kings that ever say that they had their eyes in the right place. And what's really interesting, even the ones that did, as soon as the king is gone, what happens to the nation? We're all right on track, and the king dies, and we go, and you go, whoa, how did that happen? And you see the nation never got a focus. So what this prophet is God's guy who's trying to steer the eyes of the people back to. And so he's a key person. He's critical that his faith be and his vision be where? On God. And these miracles and these things that we see happen, whether it's the crossing of the water or any of those other things, the purpose of those things is to identify for us, the readers and the people in that day, that this is God's messenger. So that we might know that when we read what they have to say, let's keep our eyes focused upon Him. So when we read through this stuff, we got to see, what is it telling us about where our vision needs to be? Where do we need to have our focus, our thinking about life? What's the priority? What's the most important thing? That's real easy to talk about up here. It's really hard to apply. Because the world we live in today looks just like this. Well, we don't have Baal worship out here. I don't think. I haven't seen the name used. Not under that name. We have Asherah, but it's not under that name. Actually, some places it is. But our world says it's not important to have your focus on God. In fact, it's bad to have your focus on God because it makes you narrow. And you get really, real picky about things. And you should give people freedom to do what they want to do and go where they want to go and make important what they want to make important. Everybody has the right to choose, do they not? Because that's what makes you successful and makes everything wonderful. And the Word says that's a lie. And history will tell us that that's a lie. So, I don't know if I've answered my question very well of so what about Elisha here, but I think if nothing else, this is the beginning that tells us we need to pay attention. It was the thing that told those prophets they need to pay attention to what this guy's saying and what he's telling us. And the very next thing that's going to happen, we'll look at next time. I've managed to stall and put it off because I didn't want to mix what we're talking about, just crossing the water and coming back, with the next one. Every commentary, almost all of them that I've run across, take this one and the next two events and they lump them all together, zip through them real quick and say, well, that's just Elisha being established by God. And Elisha did some really unique things we need to slow down, take a look at and see what did he do and why did he do it. I think God's got a whole lot more intent to communicate to us, and the whole purpose of it is to focus our vision on Him. And He's going to do that in two very dramatically different ways in these next two little stories. And if you don't kind of have that in your mind as you go through Elisha's lifetime, it'll lose you, because it's a collection, for the most part here, of a lot of really odd miracles and stories that seem to have no connection to anything. And hopefully we can draw some parallels, some connections, and somebody somewhere will help us make some sense of that. This morning, let's just maybe do checkup time to say, as we walk out that door and cheer for that Super Bowl team of ours this afternoon, say, this is great, this is fun, but what's our vision really supposed to be as we get back to life on Monday morning? Let's close. Father, we thank you for our time this morning. Thank you for your grace that's poured out to us in the preservation of these scriptures over thousands of years. That though many of them will not consider them accurate and truthful to build a history of the world and everything on, and yet amazing details keep being shown up to be accurate and connecting well with other known or discovered facts of history, that besides your proclamation that you will preserve your word because it's yours. Help us, Father, to have confidence and faith in the grace that you provided us of your truth through these writers, and help us to understand the purpose and the point of it for our lives today. We just ask that you would have us evaluate our lives with a desire to have a vision for you, an understanding and the importance of your word, that it should affect our lives and make us different people from the world we live in, that we might be an example and a witness for your Son, Jesus Christ, who gave his life for all of us, that we might have life with you and we might glorify you and bring praise to your name. We just thank you for our time together this morning in Jesus' name.